In August 2019, Dr. Cameron Siever published this article on his LinkedIn, lighting a fire across the internet. Article after article, video after video, it spread. And it's easy to see why. It promises greater cognitive ability, more creativity, enhanced mindfulness, an overwhelming sense of gratitude, and finally achieving the balance of life you have always wanted. But it had one flaw. It's wrong. You don't need to do a dopamine detox. And I'm going to show you why in this video, so we can put this trend where it belongs. But before we can talk about dopamine, there are a couple of things you need to know to understand how your brain actually works. Your brain is like a jungle. Just like when you walk through an actual jungle, each time you make a decision or engage in a task, vegetation is cleared and plants are trampled. And with enough repetitions of that routine, eventually the jungle becomes a vegetation-free trail. At this point, the routine becomes a habit. When your brain clears the vegetation, it's lowering the resistance along the path, allowing you to walk with much more ease. As your brain learns, it will associate an event as a trigger to that jungle path. When that trigger is fired, that neural pathway becomes activated, and you execute the action with very little effort. You need this process to happen. Otherwise, every activity will feel like calculating 24 times 57 in your head. You'd be so bogged down that you wouldn't be able to get anything done. But this also means that bad habits get a chance to develop. You might think this means that we are a slave to the habits we have built intentionally and unintentionally. And yeah, that is kind of true. But just like in an actual jungle, if a path is no longer traveled along, the vegetation gets a chance to heal. We actually see this happen in people recovering from addictions. When the person continues to use, we see the grey matter in the brain actually decrease. But when they stop using, the grey matter begins to restore. This process of vegetation clearing and restoring is called developmental learning. It's the process that underpins everything that we do. But there's also something that is often missed. The cues for habits don't have to be external, like the time of day or a location. Instead, your brain does something incredible. It makes predictions. Your brain recognizes how you are feeling, and then it constructs meaning to that feeling. For example, you might have a swirly, queasy feeling in your stomach, and you predict that to be hunger, so you go looking for food. In this case, that queasy feeling acts as the cue. You go execute the action, and the reward is a pleasant satiation. This process of prediction seems strange and counterintuitive. Well, that's because it is. It will take too long to explain it here, so I'm in the process of making a video on that. I'll put a card up here once it's done, but for now, either just believe me on it, or you can read the resources in the description. Now let's add the role of dopamine. You feel a queasy swell in your stomach, and you associate that feeling to be hunger, and an image of a sandwich floods your mind. In the jungle, a spotlight illuminates the sandwich. It guides you, pulls you towards the sandwich. That's dopamine. It's giving you the motivation to pursue your goal. When your brain constructed the image of the sandwich, it also created an expectation of how good it will be. You take a bite. Now there are 3 possible outcomes. 1, your experience is equal to the expectation. No change in dopamine. 2, your experience is greater than your expectation. There's an increase in dopamine activity, telling your brain this is good, remember this so you can do it again. 3, your experience is lower than your expectation. There's a decrease in dopamine activity, as to say this is bad, remember to avoid this in the future. This is important. Dopamine fires when you make a prediction, not to the sandwich itself. Dopamine activity then changes when there is a prediction error, like in outcomes 2 and 3. Let's look at another example. You're at your desk trying to get work done, and you notice that your focus is starting to wane. An unpleasant feeling begins to surface. That's your cue. Your brain constructs that feeling to be boredom, and predicts a potential solution. A light illuminates in your jungle, dopamine spikes, activating that neural pathway, and before you can catch yourself, you're on Instagram. From the moment you made that prediction, you set an expectation of what the Instagram experience would be like. But social media, internet, video games, and even TV shows are designed to keep you in a state of prediction error that constantly exceeds your expectations. This is the state that we as YouTube creators want to keep you in. Because if I can constantly exceed the expectations of your predictions by stimulating dopamine production within the neural network, then I can keep you motivated to continue watching the video. The moment I stop doing this is the moment that you leave, lowering the video's retention. The YouTube algorithm is set up to reward the videos with better retention, because the longer you watch, the more ads you will see. What happens is a process of natural selection. So the videos that surface from the depths of YouTube to your recommended sidebar or homepage are the videos that exceed your expectations the best. That's why MrBeast is so successful. So this means it's not only the engineers who design these platforms that are trying to stimulate your dopamine neurons. It's everyone else who's post content on these platforms. That's true for Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, Netflix, and every other entertainment platform. See, as a creator, we aren't trying to make you feel good, because dopamine doesn't produce pleasurable feelings. We're trying to stimulate dopamine production to keep you motivated to stay. This explains why people find themselves passively browsing through entertainment content without actually enjoying what they are doing. If you can relate, what you have experienced is neural fatigue. You can think about it like this. The light in the jungle that pulls you towards your goal is connected to a battery. Once the battery runs out of juice, the light goes out, and then you're left alone in a dark jungle. Dopamine stimulation from these sources are not making other activities less enjoyable. The batteries to your dopamine lights have been drained, meaning you have less dopamine to incite motivation to pursue other things. At this point, it might sound like I'm in favor of a dopamine detox, but I'm not, because you illuminated the lights in the jungle. Your brain made a prediction that turned the dopamine light on, and you executed the activity because of the habit you have formed. Dopamine is just there trying to guide you towards your goal. Dopamine is helping you. Otherwise, you'll be lost in a dark jungle, unable to go anywhere. Let's increase the complexity a little bit. These lights in the jungle represent the motivation towards short-term goals, both good and bad. But there's another type of dopamine neuron in the brain. You can think about this as the stars in the night sky. They are there to guide you to your long-term goals, like getting fitter, getting your degree, or starting a business. In order to stay focused on these goals, you need these neurons firing consistently. This sounds like a good thing, right? Well, not quite. If the Starlight dopamine is so bright that immediate rewards seem unattractive, you may ignore them entirely. For example, if you're so focused on losing weight, you may stop eating food. People with anorexia seem to have high levels of dopamine, and they will go to great lengths to achieve their goal. In this case, getting thin. In contrast, people with bulimia tend to have low levels of dopamine, making immediate goals more attractive, so they are more likely to binge eat, and then regret it later. In fact, people with low levels of dopamine become less motivated to work, they experience less energy and have greater difficulties making decisions, symptoms that appear in illnesses like depression and Parkinson's. I am not suggesting that dopamine causes these illnesses. There are many other bodily chemicals that all interacting together influenced by genetics, environmental factors, and developmental learning. I am, however, trying to make it clear that dopamine is essential for the pursuit of long-term and short-term goals. But that begs another question. Why do we choose one thing over another? Well, that depends on how you prescribe value. Let's look at another example, this time from a popular dopamine detox video. Nicholas opens the fridge and says you would choose the chocolate over the carrot because the chocolate will release more dopamine. But you now know this isn't right. What you choose is dependent on what the cue was and what your brain predicted. If you were feeling stressed and your brain predicted food as the response, then it's likely you would choose the chocolate because you have learned through repetition that chocolate is more comforting than a carrot. But maybe you made a commitment to yourself that you're going to lose weight, so the dopamine response will guide you towards a carrot because that will get you closer to your long-term goal. So you are the one who turned on the short-term lights, but you are also the one who put the stars in the night sky. What light you decide to pursue is largely dependent on the habits you have formed. There was a study a few years back conducted by Marco Layton that looked at the dopamine responses in amphetamine addicts and cocaine addicts. The amphetamine group was given a nondescript pill, while the cocaine group was told to consume the drug as they normally would. The result surprised everyone. As expected, the amphetamine group built up a tolerance to the drug, but the opposite happened for the cocaine group. With each dose, the dopamine activity increased. They became more sensitive to the drug. What Layton had found was in order for sensitization to happen, the addicts needed their cue. Think about what this means for you. The more you practice something, the easier it is for you to do it. The cravings or dopamine response becomes stronger, and the pathway in the brain becomes clearer. This can be a force for good, but also a force for bad, leaving people feel like their lives are out of control. This is where the dopamine detox falls flat on its face. You didn't address the problem. All you did was eliminate the external distractions that you experience on a day-to-day basis. As a result, your dopamine batteries are given a chance to recharge. If you are able to resist the temptations of your predictions, then dopamine will do what dopamine does. You will find the motivation to pursue the hard things like exercising, eating healthily, reading, and spending time on your hobby. You will become more productive because, well, what else are you going to do? Nothing? Yeah, good luck with that. It's not a surprise that people experience positive results because look at them. They're eating better, exercising, getting better sleep, being more social and more present in their lives. They experience greater creativity because they actually gave their mind space to wander. That's what a person should be doing. But how long can they keep it up? Take Leon and Nicholas as examples. They both did a dopamine detox, and shortly afterwards they both fell into similar holes. 10 months after his detox, Leon posted this video about his struggle with distractions. And Nicholas' following videos was the same problem, just repackaged: procrastination and balance. I'm not trying to shame these guys. I like these guys, you should watch their videos. But I am trying to highlight that a dopamine detox doesn't work. No detox does. And you know why. You've always known. It does not address the reasons why you formed the habits in the first place. So once the challenge is over, you are back to where you started. You need to understand where these habits originate from. And normally we form these habits to protect ourselves from something. For Leon, he used podcasts to protect himself from loneliness. And that resonates quite deeply with me as well. Once you understand why you have formed these habits, you can use the science of habits and dopamine to your own advantage to slowly achieve the things you want to achieve. You'll mess up. I continue to mess up. I know I'll walk down the wrong path sometimes, but my focus is to walk down these paths less often and down the correct ones more often. My advice to you would be the same. It's better to make small improvements that compound over years to aim yourself at a mountain and never make it past Camp 1. Dr. Cameron Seeper never intended this trend to be contorted with misinformation. His dopamine fasting schedule was intended to help people engage with common behavioral addictions less often. He simply wanted people to take a break and allow themselves to decompress without external stimulus. But we cannot be surprised that his technique has morphed into something wrong. Because we've seen this before. Think about it. Snake oil, make money fast courses, extreme diets, they all promise a solution to a common pain point most people have, and they promise to fix it quickly. People get sucked in because why should I do the hard work when I can use this hack that will make my problem go away? As you guys know, your problem doesn't disappear. Instead, you have less money, less time, and you have reinforced that you are the problem. The only people that benefit are the people that make a profit at your expense. A dopamine detox is just this old trend in new packaging.
But today we are mainly going to focus on how what we do and how we do it and how we conceptualize those things leads to changes in this amazing molecule in our brain and bodies that we call dopamine. I'm going to teach you what dopamine is and what it is not. There are a lot of myths about the molecule dopamine. We often hear about so-called dopamine hits. Today we are going to dispel many common myths about dopamine.
Dr. Andrew Huberman is one of the many creators out there trying to help you understand the problem better. I think it's an important problem to understand better. Videos from genuine people like Leon and Nicholas have their place too. They bring attention and awareness. I didn't know this dopamine detox trend existed until I saw Nicholas' video. but they don't do a great job in explaining how and why the detox work. Since you clicked on this video, I know you want to improve your life. That's an admirable thing and I'm happy for you. So take this information, but be skeptical about it. A healthy amount of skepticism, I think, will activate your dopamine neurons and motivate you to find the truth. If you want to avoid the deceptive people on the internet and learn what makes an influencer truly great, then I made this video that you can watch next. But for now, thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.